Hey everybody, this is Jason. I thought it'd be fun to give you a walkthrough of my game 1750 Britain versus France, show you how a turn works, and just some of the things that went into the design of the game. The first thing that you do on a given turn, and basically I'm just going to be walking you through this turn sequence, which is found on the player mat, is you draw a historic event card. So at the beginning of each turn, you'll take a historic event card, and you'll add that to your hand of cards. The next thing you're going to do is make political objective attempts. Each turn you're entitled to use one die to try to achieve a political objective. There's a political objectives mat, and the difficulty of each political objective is on the middle of each section. So in this case, I'm going to try an easy one. I'm going to try to get the allegiance of Sweden, and I need a 3 or higher to do that. Now, before you roll your die, you could spend 1 gold to boost your score by 1, or 2 gold to boost your score by 2. Additionally, you could play historic event cards, like I drew a diplomat. You can spend this card and add to your political objective roll. So I'm going to use this diplomat to add my 2 to my score. So now it's virtually automatic, right? Yes, a 2 plus 2 is 4, which exceeds the number necessary, 3. I place one of my control markers on there. I now have the allegiance of Sweden, and what does that do for me? In this case, it adds a timber to my economy, but all these different political objectives give you different results. Some of them give you additional units, some of them give you economic benefits. After your political objective attempt, you can make your different purchases. Your purchases, for the most part, are your battle deck. So you have all these cards at the start of the game. A lot of them are leaders, some of them are different kinds of generic units like local allies, privateers, German mercenaries, and you can use gold to place those on your purchases part of your mat. So I could spend 3 gold to purchase James Wolfe and place him on my purchases section of my player mat. You can also spend gold to buy additional historic event cards, and those cost 1 gold apiece. Now what's kind of interesting is with your battle deck, you know what you're going to get. Obviously those are cards you have at the start of the game, and it's just a known quantity. With the historic event cards, it could be very powerful and very useful, or potentially it might be something that isn't as relevant to what's going on, the most critical needs that you have in the game at that time. So you kind of got to make that decision whether you want to gamble and try to get a historic event card where you don't exactly know what you're going to get, but it could be very powerful, or do you go with that guaranteed battle deck card? After you've made your purchases, you execute movement on the board, and the board is comprised of these different 4 theaters. You've got India, North America, the Caribbean, and Africa. The colonies are set up in basically an H shape like this, and you'll first move your military units. So I've got Geoffrey Amherst here. I'm going to move him over to this space, an adjacent colony in India. And I've got Edward Boscawen here. And I'm actually going to stop just for a second, but he could move here to this other Caribbean colony, or he could move out to the high seas. And from the high seas, in a subsequent turn, you can move to any colony. So the high seas enjoys a ton of freedom of movement, but when you're inside of a theater, you can just move to adjacent spaces. After movement is completed, you have battles. Battles are fought primarily with dice, and you'll have modifiers on the different cards. So this card rolls 1 die. It's a local ally of the French, and Geoffrey Amherst rolls a die plus 2. So each side would roll their respective die. The local allies get a 4. Geoffrey Amherst gets a 5, so that actually goes up to a 7, and 7 defeats the 4. So in this case, the local allies would be destroyed, removed from play. This colony would become the property of Great Britain, and Britain would receive the silk that this colony produces as an export from the French player. Main objective of the game, of course, is to control as many colonies as possible at the end of the game. So good job, Britain, in this case. They are closer to achieving their objectives. After battles are complete, you place your purchases either at the high seas or a colony you control. I might be thinking to myself that I'm concerned about the French threat up here, so I'm going to bolster my defenses of this Caribbean colony, St. Kitts. After my purchases have been placed, I collect my income. I get 3 gold plus 1 gold for every set of 3 different exports. So as long as you've got at least 3 different exports, that gives you an additional gold per every set of 3 different exports that you have. So I would be entitled to receive 3 gold for playing the game, and I'd get an additional gold in this case for having that set of 3 additional exports. So anyway, that's the basic framework for how the game works. Again, one of the toughest things that I'm trying to ask the player to think through is, do they want to have those guaranteed battle deck cards that they know can be placed onto the board, go out and fight, and try to take over colonies, or do they want to go for those historic event cards where it's a little more random but potentially very powerful? And then also, I had mentioned previously that you can bolster your scores with your political objective attempts by spending gold. And that's also a tough decision because these benefits are also very powerful and they come into effect immediately. With your other battle deck purchases, there's a little bit of a delay because, as you noticed, I make those purchases, execute battles, and then only bring those reinforcements out after that in a turn. So if you can achieve a political objective, they can confer very powerful benefits immediately, and that's a very, very powerful thing in this game. So anyway, that's a quick run through of a turn of 1750 Britain versus France.